We already did this. Because this is a one neuron pathway, the only thing that releases neurotransmitters are the axons of that single neuron coming out, right? Or the axon terminals. Here we have preganglionic axons, we have ganglia, because we have this synapse out in the body here, and we have a postganglionic axon as well. So here, in terms of what we would call these things, this would be called the preganglionic cell. You could call it a preganglionic neuron or preganglionic, I tend to just say axon, because that's what it is. Here is the ganglion. Now you have a post-ganglionic axon here, right? And what's the preganglionic axon going to do? Release a neurotransmitter within the ganglion. Postganglionic axon is going to release the neurotransmitter onto the effector. Okay. What do you use them for? We already mentioned posture, movement, etc. With the somatic motor division. Autonomic is really regulating homeostasis, monitoring and regulating glandular secretion, and everything else. So that's just a picture I drew there. Let's put some things on here. In the somatic motor output, the neurotransmitter is 100% of the time always acetylcholine. Always. It's excitatory. The excitatory cholinergic receptor is what we call nicotinic. And when acetylcholine binds to the nicotinic receptor, that triggers depolarization of the sarcolemma. In fact, it causes a net influx of sodium, depolarizes the membrane threshold, and you get an action. This is what the two-neuron pathway looks like. We have a preganglionic neuron here, releasing a neurotransmitter. It is always excitatory in the ganglion. And that should make sense, right? The brain says, oh, let's get the information out to the effector. We need to send it here, then we need to send it here. So this is always excitatory. This is always acetylcholine here, and this receptor is always nicotinic, just like we did before. Okay. Which is going to trigger depolarization in the membrane. And then the signal travels down through here. And depending upon where we are, this is going to be norepinephrine or epinephrine, mainly if this is the sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system, or acetylcholine if this is the parasympathetic branch. And the receptors, adrenergic receptors, we call them alpha and beta here, a couple different kinds. I don't want to get into too much detail with the differences between alpha and beta receptors. They're both GPCR receptors, which means that they're going to trigger a second messenger. And depending upon the situation, we'll see that they can actually either be excitatory or inhibitory. They're mostly excitatory, but there are some cases where they are inhibitory. And we'll have to look at those in context rather than try to talk about them now. It doesn't really matter. Acetylcholine, down there, is released on muscarinic receptors, largely inhibitory, except in the digestive system where it would be excitatory. So it kind of just, again, what response and what receptor we get down here depends on what is the target. What are we trying to accomplish? Okay? I don't know. Snake chasing a guy, the guy takes a nap, whatever. It's kind of boring. But you understand that the only thing that this is trying to show is that you're aware that sympathetic. You ever been really nervous, really scared, really excited, right? That's a sympathetic response. Pupils dilate, lets in more light so you can see better, sharper images. Heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up to get more oxygen and nutrients to your body. Sweat glands start secreting sweat to cool down. Bronchioles dilate to get more air into your lungs, right? That's all centered around anything to either help you fight something or to run away from something. The easiest thing to think about here is like when you exercise, if you were to go start running around the track or whatever, that's a pure sympathetic response. And everything that happens to your body in response to that is all designed to try to make your body a more efficient machine. Okay. Parasympathetic is to return the body back to normal. So once a crisis has passed, you have to restore those resting conditions. That's the parasympathetic brain. So we use it to bring us back to normal, back to rest. If we were to over-exaggerate our parasympathetic system, that would actually depress the body even further. We don't want to do that. We just want to get it back to rest. Let's not worry about the receptors here. I want to do them in context. This just shows you what I just mentioned here, what happens with sympathetic and parasympathetic responses, right? The pupils of the, and don't worry about this column right here. This should make sense. Pupils should dilate with a sympathetic response. They dilate. Why? You want to have sharper visual images. You're in a crisis, you're in stress, or whatever, you want a sharper visual image, you need more light. Salivary glands secrete mucuses and enzymes, as opposed to parasympathetic watery. That doesn't really affect anything or matter too much here. The heart rate increases the rate and the force of contraction. You ever feel when you're really nervous your chest beating hard, pounding hard? That's because epinephrine causes the heart to actually contract harder. Okay? So we get that with anything that's a stimulant, makes our heart beat harder.